welcome to Working Progress. We're very excited you've decided to join us today, as we're going to be talking about benchmarking as a reality check. And our guest today is a familiar face around TTI Success Insights. It's Juan Kingsbury. So Juan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Juan, you are the founder and talent strategist for Career Blindspot. But before you created your own organization, you used to work right here. You used to be in this seat. So you've got a lot of experience with these tools and utilizing assessments in helping people better understand themselves.
Sometimes too much, I wonder to myself, yes.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. So tell us a little bit about why bench? Yeah.
Why did you do
Why
this to
did
us?
you go? Why did you go out on your own?
It's funny because I remember when I left and became a value-added associate or started my own business, I was like, I'm going to do a benchmark a week because I was obsessed. And I think now you guys have done a really great job of getting the value out and teaching people. But back then it was still a little kind of like asking people to go cliff diving.
That feels a little
or eating your
extreme.
vegetables because we get the value of it, but it can be daunting depending on the client.
Sure.
But I was I'm going to do one a week. Well, doing one is great. Selling them, great too, but totally different muscle
story.
set. So
Yeah.
I was obsessed, still am. It's kind of my gift, my curse. TTI and any good assessment, any great assessment is measuring the peg. Benchmarking is measuring the hole or the roll. I can't not do it. And so when I left, that was kind of the crux, and it still is. Less likely, like Google Juan Kingsbury benchmark, you're probably not going to find much. but yeah, that was the I want to do this more. Mm-hmm. In fact, I get a little offended when I find out our peers don't do it.
Really?
Yeah. Like
interesting.
A lot.
So a couple questions to kind of help set the stage, because we're already using terms and
inside
nomenclature.
Terms,
yeah. So first off, let's talk about your company name. So you created a company called Career Blindspot.
Yes.
Why? Because I really like it, but
because I'm a high I and I change my mind a lot. Originally I called it Project A, which in China there's about 1 billion Project A's. It was inspired by an obscure Jackie Chan movie.
Oh,
so
okay.
One day I was like, I need to come up with something more unique but nuanced, and it came out of when you're a hiring manager or leader and you hire, people are like, oh, they're great. They were in the interview, this and that, and then flash forward to 3 weeks later, 6 months, not so great. Oh, they're not this. They're not. It's the blind spot of the hiring manager or the individual who's taking a job and then later on like, this isn't what it turned out. They said this. Hindsight's always 20/20. So it was the inevitability that people don't always see the full picture when it comes to not just hiring brand new, but hey, I'm going to go from, accounting to sales. So it's not a bad thing. It's an inevitable thing. It's the same thing with, we all have mirrors on our car. We don't necessarily use them. The problem is not that we have blind spots. The problem is when we know we have them and we don't embrace them. And so I was like, I'm going to call that Career Blind Spot. Sometimes I wonder if I should have called it Talent Blind Spot, but it's been 12 years, so I'm going to keep it.
I was going to say, I think it's pretty clever, and I think it is a great descriptor. It gets people going, huh.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So then one more thing we've already jumped into talking about, but benchmarking.
Yeah.
So for people who are like, what the heck are you talking about? You've kind of alluded to it a little bit with your peg and hole analogy, but benchmarking is?
Benchmarking is, to me, what doesn't happen when you actually want or when you don't get the results that you want. It's setting expectations, almost boundaries. There's the movie Moneyball. Where are you familiar with that movie?
I've seen it.
For those who haven't seen it, it's a true story about the Oakland A's, basically using data and statistics to, instead of hire superstar players that you got to pay them a lot, you're hiring hits or steals or et cetera. You're hiring the stats, and so you can get 4 players that can do the work of a major star at a fraction of the price. And so, but it's saying like, this is what we need to win. So benchmarking is being honest and realistic on what you actually want and what you're willing to do to get there. And so with our assessments, it allows us to say, hey, this is the ideal person we're looking for. But and I'm a big believer in the assessments. I changed my life. the odds. They help me anticipate like worst case, best case, but the reports are the end result. If I can't get hiring managers, leaders, or I say whose rear end is on the line when this doesn't work out,
Sure.
to admit like this is what we're looking for. It's saying benchmarking is a scope of work. I'm hiring someone to fix my house, not necessarily redo my AC. And a lot of hiring managers don't do that as well as we would like to, or they do, but then a leader changes their mind. I want marketing, or I want sales, or those little. It's the difference between I want to go to California, okay, beach, go west, but LA, San Diego, San Francisco, a little bit different destinations, a little bit different weather. So it's getting everyone on the same page and defining, as my wife likes to say, definition of done, or in case, or what's the vital outcome. That's the term that I use.
And we're talking people versus roles, right?
Yes, it's talent to task fit. I mean, people need to do the job, but it's like, what is the job you need them to do? And I think, I mean, it's human, but we often are too vague, or we expect too much. And but it's like, you got to say it. I'm not saying expecting a lot isn't wrong. It's just, let's be realistic of what it's going to take. You want your next Michael Jordan, or you just want a starting point guard who can, pass the ball and get a couple stats. There's a big difference.
And so this process in your mind helps really create the boundaries and the guidelines around what do I want? How far am I willing to go? Where do I say no, or to this person or this candidate, or to what I want in this role?
Yeah, like, I like it because I kind of get to poke. And it's like, is that what you really want? And, some of the best client engagements, or the most confidence I got as a entrepreneur consultant, is people didn't listen to me. We did it, or we avoid, and then they call 3 months later, hey, Juan, didn't work out, or hey, and there's always exceptions. I've bet wrong, even though the odds were in the favor,
Right.
But I'd say I'd still make that bet 10 times, 100 times. And flukes, every now and again. I'm 5'9", a guy like me wins the slam dunk contest in the NBA, but I wouldn't bet on 100 5'9" players to win the next championship. Right. And so I like it because it's basically getting to the point. It's getting to, you want to move the needle. What do you want to do about it? And it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but I enjoy that. And I think the people who really are focused on winning or achieving whatever realistic, they don't like it at first, but they always appreciate it later. And I've tweaked the process. I think every VAA has to a degree. But it's being honest. I think it is a uncomfortable thing when you are inconsistent with your values. Benchmarking is like, all right, let's get consistent. And that's not a bad thing, but it can be uncomfortable.
So you introduced this to me as utilizing it as a reality check. Mm-hmm. So I can go lots of different ways when I think about that. But what do you mean when you say, let me use benchmarking as a reality check? What does that mean to Juan?
That I believe a lot of leaders, performers live in their heads and don't go outside, or don't go and like, what am I actually supposed to do? Or I play this little game with individuals of like, look, if you left your job tomorrow, if they replace you, who do they get? Is that what you do now? Well, no, I do all this other stuff. Okay. So if you're gone, they don't care about all that other stuff. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying you don't deserve a raise, but it's what is it, 100 degrees right now in Phoenix?
At least.
Benchmarking is it? Or I want it to be 75, but I want to have a nice picnic and not melt. And so benchmarking is a way to humble yourself so you can get what you want. Or the biggest thing is, not just now, but every generation, like, oh, young people don't want to work, or we hire people who don't want to work, or whatever, some version of it's excuses. Is what I tell people is like, or I'll use a bad word, but a strong word, like we're hiring losers, or people don't have work ethic. I'm like, well, you're also attracting them. So all the great people, they don't want to come to you.
Yeah, that's a reality check.
Yeah, and some people, sometimes they want to check me, but I'm like, tell me, especially a job description, they're often vague. If they're for everyone, they're for no one. And I think one of my favorite ads that I've ever seen downtown Phoenix was a like a telephone pole, like you're doing
Like manual labor,
you're
like a
on the
flyer?
telephone pole, you're doing electrician type of work, right? And it
yeah.
says, and it's a picture of a guy high, and in the air on like a not scaffolding, but like on one of those lifts.
Okay.
And it says, if you're not afraid of heights, apply here. It's
That's pretty
eliminating
smart.
everyone,
Yeah.
And so I think most job descriptions are not clear on what you want. And I say most, I'm not checking everyone, but a good job description is not for everyone. A good job description says, ooh, I like that problem. I want that problem every day. And so benchmarking helps you get to a bold, truthful, inevitable. And so when we don't do that, we end up being too vague in general. And that's okay. I'm not saying it's a problem, but now you're dealing with all these problems and we're blaming people, we're blaming resources. But benchmarking is a reality check of like, no, they said they want you to paint their house, but you only have a lawnmower. So you
that's not gonna
either
work.
need to charge them more or they need to provide the equipment or something. And the phrase scope of work comes back. Benchmarking is like, jobs change. They're supposed to. We live in a world where AI just boom, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's been around, but casually,
Sure.
your mom could use it right now. Hell, they might be making this podcast using it. I know you guys are. That changes job descriptions,
Right.
And do you need a 4-year degree to have AI? I don't know. But 20 years ago, if there was some new technology, they'd probably be like, well, you need 4 years or whatever. And so it's like the rules keep changing, and therefore the definition of getting a hit or winning a game or making a sales, it's not completely changing, but it is changing. And so benchmarking is a way to realign and find that realistic, idealistic outcome that I think we all can achieve, but sometimes we're carrying way too much stuff, or we have too high of expectations, and therefore we don't get the main thing that we want.
Right. So I'm hearing you say it's a way to really focus in on the important stuff and to understand maybe not just what you are getting, but what you're not getting as well.
I'd say definitely focus, but also, what usually comes up during a session, because you're getting subject matter experts, you're getting, I don't want to waste my time with people who really don't know what it takes, but also if they don't have consequences in this role, then, it's an opinion, but not necessarily a credible one. And so getting them to say, but they should paint the house or fix this. I'm like, okay, well, what? Well, in the past, so-and-so did this. Well, so-and-so still here? Oh, you know what? He didn't like painting the house. We hired him to mow the lawn. Well, he's a bad person. Okay, well, do you want to get another person?
Right.
And for me, you're a Princess Bride.
Yes.
The inconceivable. You keep using that word. I don't think you know what it means. That's most words, I think, in general, but especially when it comes to hiring and performance, grit, hustle, hard work. I think as an employee here, I was great, and then sometimes I wasn't. As an entrepreneur, I'm great, sometimes I'm not. But there's a lot of jobs, especially anything admin, don't hire me. Hell, my wife who works here, I told the person who hired her I wouldn't hire her for this role, but I would for this, and they made the decision, and so far things have worked out. People can change. Jobs change, and now it's both happening faster and faster. So if we're not having a process to evaluate how much change is going on, it's not terrible. It's just not optimal. And we can get optimal, but we need to slow down so we can speed up. I hate cliches, but they're often true. And I think that's what it is. That's a good thing. But when you say it and you don't actually do it,
Right.
I'd rather people not say it, and so.
Or don't whine when you get a bad hire or
Yeah.
you're unhappy with the way that your role is working out.
Yeah, and even if you hire the perfect person, they might get married. They might have to move across the country. Their turnover is going to happen. And my strong belief is a different subject, but if you're really, really great at your job, you're not going to stay doing the same thing the same way, whether it's your choice or not. So let's get ahead of it.
Sure.
And it's okay if you've outgrown the job, but something needs to give. Something needs to adjust. And so benchmarking, formally doing it with the assessments or just theoretically doing it over lunch, be like, oh, this is no longer the sales goal or this is no longer my outcome. It's uncomfortable, but so is meeting mediocre, if not below average standards. Pick your poison.
Right. Well, and to be fair, most things that are worth doing aren't always comfortable.
Yeah. Well,
So-
and to be really fair, I don't expect hiring managers, leaders to be great at this. Like sometimes
Sure.
I'm like, oh, why don't people know this? I got paid 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and I loved it to learn DISC inside out. I've only trained someone for a 4-hour session,
Right.
maybe 3 days in some cases. That's still a micro fraction. They're not supposed to be great at this. So if they want to, we have trainings, e-learnings, et cetera. But yeah, it's almost like give yourself grace, forgive yourself, but also give yourself the space to be honest of this is what I'm really looking for. And in more layman's terms of like, to me, benchmarking is being selfish
As an organization?
as an individual
Okay.
or people. Because if you hire the right person who does a job that you don't want to do, otherwise you'd be applying for it. If you hire the right person, then that frees you up to do more of the work you want to do. So selfish is a strong word, but it's like, yeah, if I'm making this decision, if I'm the one who's going to have to fire the person or retrain them or pick up their mistakes, isn't it better I get someone who actually wants to do this job? And isn't by nature that person shouldn't be like me? Mm-hmm. Because if they were like me, they'd be hiring someone else to do this job. So I feel like it is not just a competitive advantage, it's a mind shift on what work is supposed to be. It's not just go to work, put your head down 40 hours a week. It used to be, it still can be, but all of us have unrealistic high expectations and we want to be happy and fulfilled. Like, this is the work that it takes. Fulfillment is not easy. It's actually, I think it's more scary in most cases than we'd like to believe.
For sure. So you talked a little bit about what it means from an individual's perspective, as in I'm the hiring manager or I'm the person who's trying to, look ahead through, 3 to 5 years or maybe even just 6 months and figure out, what do I need in this role to replace myself?
Yeah.
What about why should I care if I'm on the other side? Like I'm a candidate, right? I'm out there and I'm looking for a new role right now. Why should I care about this and whether or not some organization is utilizing this?
Yeah.
Like why?
I think, especially go back to that F word I just said, not the one you're thinking. Like fulfillment. If you really want to be happy in a job, you better know what they're really asking you to do. And I wouldn't put all my eggs on the basket of a job description. I'm not saying it's completely misleading, but
let's be real. They're kind of creative writing exercises.
You said it, not
sometimes.
me. But yeah, no, I mean, I do agree. I'm like, and especially as someone who refers and tells people, hey, you should go check out this job or blah, 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 just to entertain it. If I'm not excited and I don't know about whatever the engineering or the SaaS or whatever, that's okay. But if someone else is that's a good thing. They shouldn't be trying to convince me, who's never going to do this job. But they should be trying to appeal to the person who wants to do it. At a conference recently, I said, good marketing, someone else's quote, but good marketing is repelling 99% of the people you don't want, AKA attracting the 1%, the high performers.
Right.
And so as an individual, why should I care? Is if I really want to do my best work, I better get to the truth of, they're saying this, but I think this. And you basically be skeptical, not pessimistic. I think pessimism is more of a negative thing, but skeptical of, they're saying it's grand, but is it my kind of grand? It's like, I always think of like, if you were in college or any type of training and a friend says, oh, that teacher's awful. And then you go in and you take it and you're like, actually, they're pretty cool. Oh, my friend's a butthead. I actually wanted to work. They were like, one person's trash is another person's treasure. One person's dream job is another person's hell landscape. One person's in-office job is another person's, that's great, that's going to give me the structure and the commute and blah, blah, blah. So as an individual, a benchmark or using the concept is be like, what are they really hiring me to do? Are they hiring me to lead the department, or they just really want me to assimilate and be a spokesperson? Which, that's not bad, but that's not what I want. So don't lie to yourself. And that's another way to say it. Hindsight is 20/20. Every time they be like, oh, this in the interview or that. So benchmarking is not making up the future, but trying to play the odds and realize that there are inevitabilities. Phoenix is going to get hot in the summer. If I get mad and I didn't maintain my air conditioning, that's my fault.
Right.
Benchmarking is looking up the climate and realizing the weather's going to fluctuate.
Got it. And then how about on the, I mean, I think we've talked around it, but what about on the company side? So say I'm not from like the hiring manager side,
but just like,
but like an organization. So
Yeah.
I'm part of company ABC. Why should I be doing this? Because I suspect this isn't something, well, you said it. It's not super easy. It takes time. It takes, you know, some brain power. And I suspect it's not super cheap, all, you know, in the grand scheme of things. So why should I care? Why should I invest?
For someone who isn't or for an organization who's not focused on actual high performers, yeah, it's a cost. But for those who were like, no, we want to go to the moon, we want to hit our moonshot or fail doing it, then it's an investment. And especially when you're like, hey, this is a 100K position, or this position is going to affect millions of dollars, then, and that's, whether you're a small business owner or you're an individual, we often go cheap. Of like, oh, I only want to pay $10 an hour, 20. But I go, what would you pay if you knew you got the perfect person for the next 2 years? What's the most amount of money you would pay? And you can see their brains kind of struggle.
I was going to say, that's making my wheels
and
turn.
they're like, well, and they're focused on the most. But I go, yeah, you need to focus on like, what would you get out of it? If you had the right person, what are they doing? Basic math, I was not a great student at math, but if I give someone $100 an hour and they give me back $300 an hour, where do I give the money? Sure. But if we're not thinking about that outcome, we go negative, which I think is our ego, our brains trying to keep us alive. But culturally, to me, you know, people, it's not, in my experience, yes, do we want more performance, this or that? But I'd say at least 30%, if not 60% of the time, I just want them to be grateful. Well, benchmarking is a way to show that everything's off. You're not grateful. If you're getting something that you didn't want, you're not working hard for it, then you're not going to be grateful. You're going to be resentful for it.
Absolutely.
And so if a leader, or I would say an organization, benchmarking is the DNA, the mitochondria of culture, good or bad. And so if you want to actually tweak and change it, let's be honest about what we're asking the leaders to do. Or what we're asking leaders to ask of the rest of the company. Sure. And if we're vague and we switched, you know, a lot of times people will say, you know, 3 years ago I was told this. Like, you said 3 years ago. Like, update your stuff, man.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's completely wrong, but if you don't do it, and so if you have all these people who are driving to San Diego and we want them in LA, that's a huge difference. Like literally, like plan a trip with 20 of your friends, 10 of them are going to LA, 10 of them are going to San Diego. It's going to be inconsistent. You can make the most of it. But from an organizational culture, if you actually want better, what are those things, employee scores, or more importantly, customer scores, then you better have people doing the right things that we need now, not 2 years ago. Hell, in some cases, not 2 months ago.
Right.
And so organizationally, it's almost like a holistic thing. It's almost like surgery, but you're trying to create good vibes. Otherwise, you can just wish for it and hope people take responsibility for themselves. Benchmarking puts the control back into the people who are investing the resources, the time, the energy. You actually do benchmarkings instead of pizza parties, and you'll be happier.
Quote of the day. Quote of the day. Well, so I mean, you said it. It's the DNA, or it's the pieces of the culture, right? You're creating that accountability up and down and across. You're not just saying things like, well, we decided this 10 years ago and that's how it is, yeah. Right? You're reassessing and you're creating that consistency, but in a way that is creating accountability.
Yes.
Too.
Yes,
I suspect.
To me, if I could really simplify. Simplify. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do benchmarks. I don't edit papers. Not just benchmarking, but not just me either. Any consultant coach who uses good assessments, quality assessments, and takes the time. I think at the end of the day, they're cultivating two skills: personal accountability. This is on me, or what is on me, and what can I control, my circle of control versus awareness or influence. But then also compassion for yourself. Of like, I can't do everything. I only have a lawnmower. Like, I could put it on the roof, but I don't think that's going to re-roof it. But like, that's not my fault or ability. But you know what? I want to be a roofer because I get paid more, whatever it is. And so when you're doing this stuff, it's like the yin yang symbol.
Yeah.
it's about discipline, but also grace or space, whatever the word people are comfortable with. Otherwise, to me, you go one of two extremes. The old way was just grind them, make them work.
Sure.
You know, they got nowhere else to go, and you could. I'm not saying that was the best way, but I'm also not saying that was terrible. Hell, military and more disciplined things, you do that. You don't get the happy-go-lucky people,
Right.
but you
We're
still
still
get
around,
results.
but
Yeah.
there's some begrudgingly, getting through.
Yeah,
some
and
of
then
that.
I think that's like theory X versus theory Y, and I think the other extreme that's really popped out in the last couple decades is we got to care for people, we got to invest. And I'm not against that, but I don't like doing that for people who don't show up and do the minimum job that you want. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm like, why would I go to marriage counseling with someone I don't love? Why would I give this extra stuff to someone who's not even meeting the standard? That's my job, is to make sure you meet the standard. And people disagree with me, but I'm like, how do we have both of these things? How can I get you to hold yourself to grind as much as you want, but then also, especially remote people, rest? Because if you burn out, you're no good to me. If you've ever trained for a marathon and run, they're like, as much as training is important, the most important thing, you need to rest. Because if you tweak your knee, you ain't running any race. And so we want people to be great at both of those things. Meanwhile, look in the mirror, what are you doing? And it's like parenting. No, if you're a parent, you show up, you're a good parent. But you're not necessarily a happy parent. And you got to take inventory and be like, this is what I do want to work hard on, and this is how I reset like a champ. But if I'm not doing that, I can't expect the 10 people beneath me, the 100 people, the 1,000 people. They'll figure it out, but especially if you're not doing it and everyone else is, or some people are, those are the people who are not going to stick around.
Right.
That's
right.
okay, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and I also, as you were just going through that, I was also just imagining, I don't know why, but I got a picture of like guardrails, right? It gives the company, it gives the individual, it gives the team, it just gives you these guardrails to be like, is this my fight? Do I need to do this or do I not? And am I overstepping, to the two extremes that you were just talking about? I don't know why. I just envisioned these guardrails.
I love that, and I'm going to make you cringe again, but then make you laugh. I'm calling my shot like Babe Ruth. I always hated the phrase, I wouldn't ask anyone to do what I wouldn't do. And I'm the CEO, and I'll take out the trash. If you're the CEO and you're having to take out the trash, your COO is not doing their job. I get the message of even I'll do this stuff.
Right.
But you should be paying someone happily who will do maintenance and do all these other things, etc. Benchmark that you probably hired the wrong person, and that's okay. But it's that kind of stuff, these cliches or these things, they're not wrong, but it's like, are you really paying attention to what you're saying and what you're doing? And when those are out of whack, people smell it. They see it. And you can spin it all day long, but now you're putting energy in trying to spin something. My advice is don't even change what you do every day. Just change what you say you do every day. Say the values or say the real values that you display. Not to say you can't change your values, but to me, the crime isn't being inconsistent. It's not course correcting. That's the flaw, that we're going to do better than we don't. Let's just say, no, this is us, and it's good. And if you want great for you, but everyone who's here is doing good, they're great. It's just not for you, and that's okay. Like, all jobs end. Integrity and clarity, that's an option, and that's an individual's choice, but organizations can put a lot of influence into that with benchmarks, coaching, workshops, et cetera.
Right. I'm a little overwhelmed, if I'm being honest. No, it's great conversation. But as I'm thinking about, at the beginning of this, I had one, vision, if you will, of what I was seeing as benchmarking as a reality check. But, really it's created this whole conversation around the whole culture of an organization by using this. So, as we're we need to wrap things up. As we come to a close, We've talked around a whole bunch in the last 30 minutes, but what's the one thing? So if somebody's listening to us or watching this conversation and they're, a leader or an individual, in an organization, and they're going, that's interesting. What do they do? How would you say to somebody, this is the one thing I want you to remember, and this is how you can take this conversation and do something with it?
How much time I got?
Go ahead.
Legit, I got a good answer. And
Okay,
I'll
okay.
shout out to Bill and Dave Bunce there, because this was Disc 101.
Yeah.
There's 3 conflicts in the workplace: me versus you, which I think our whole industry is based on, Juan and Brittney don't get along or whatever. There's me versus job. That's Juan's not doing his job, which happened plenty around here. It went the other way, but sometimes not so much. And that's me not fitting the benchmark. Or not being a benchmark and me just doing what I want, which
Right.
is usually the problem. And then there's me versus me. Juan's got a problem with himself. He's a D and an I, and right now he's only acting like a high I, and he's not able to be assertive, take the risk, etc. And so I always pictured Russian nesting dolls. You know what Russian nesting
I
dolls?
do, yeah.
And so me versus you, that's what gets all the attention. Juan and Brittney, they're beefing, or they get along great, whatever it is. But underneath that is always, well, we get along because I can trust you to do your job, or we don't get along because I can't trust you, or you can't trust me, or some version of that. But at the core of all of this is me versus me. Why did I take that job? Or I'm denying that my job changed. And so whether you're an individual or a company, but especially benchmarks, it's the concepts are the same, but if you're like a one mom and pop shop versus a 50 employee versus, there are variables that matter.
Yeah.
But realize those are the source of all your conflicts. And conflict is not bad. You want conflict in the workplace. Otherwise, you ain't doing anything.
Right.
But do you have the right conflict? And so diagnosed, where's our real problem here? It's not the people. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. We're humans. But we're a company. We're trying to do something. We give money because we want to make money. And yeah, businesses should be more about that. But we have a problem when we're giving money and we're making less money than what we give. But if you want accountability, invest in people figuring out what they want to do for work. You might not get it back directly, but you will change that person's life. And I would imagine that's what TDI did for me. I'm not here, but here I am. Mm-hmm. They didn't make me do this. You didn't make me do this. You can't force that. You can earn it. And so benchmarking is just the catalyst, is being clear on all of these conflicts that are inevitable. The question is, are you harnessing them? That's my TED Talk.
I was going to say, mic drop.
Thank you.
One, seriously, time flew, and I really appreciate you coming and talking about this. I know you're very passionate about it. It's very obvious, but I think that just even those last few minutes, if we don't remember anything else, it's, really helping to create that for someone inside of some organization.
Yeah,
so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor. It comes full circle. This wasn't a valedictorian. I barely passed high school. But this stuff I excel at that, and like the least I can do is share. So honored.
Awesome. Thank you.
You got it.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. We're looking forward to the next, and we hope you'll join us then.